Hey everybody, welcome to, I believe it's module 4, possibly module 5, but I think it's module 4. I will apologize to everybody watching this on the replay ahead of time. There's a possibility that I either have a breakthrough infection with Omicron or bacterial pneumonia. So there may be some coughing and other interruptions that I apologize for in the presentation tonight. So what I'm going to do is we'll still have light discussions since it's a smaller group after the lecture portion, but our big group discussion after you've had a chance to do the assignment will be in 2 weeks as usual. I will also quite possibly at that time be in Georgia as my father's health has gotten worse, and they've asked me to come down and help him prepare for this next stage in in life, which may include leaving the planet. So when we have our next presentation, I'll be connected at their house. That might mean that I don't have as good of a video feed, because you know how the elderly are with their internet service, and if there's a way to cut $10 off the internet service to reduce the quality, I'm sure my dad has already done it. So no idea how bad that'll be. Let me go ahead and pull up screen share. Okay, so tonight's module, and it is module 4, is transmuting pain into magical power. And let's see, yeah, I can still. Good. I think the film strip will be better if I move it to the other side. There we go. So in our last module, we talked about using the intense power of ecstatic states, such as orgasm and spiritual ecstasy, or music and mystical ecstatic states to charge our magical practice. And this week, we're going to talk about the reverse side of the same coin, which is transmuting the power of pain for the same purposes. And hopefully for those who were confused by that last module, this will help it to make a little bit more sense, because there were some people who thought that the thoughts that you have at that moment of orgasm or that moment of ecstasy had to be about whatever the sigil was or whatever the working was. And so folks were saying, I just don't know if I could think about manifesting that new job when I'm in the throes of an orgasm. That's not what we're doing. So I think by sharing with you the other side of the coin, it may help you understand both of these modules better, because it's about harnessing the energy. So we've already well established that we're energetic expressions, energetic beings living in a world made up of the same stuff as the cosmos. And we talk about that in terms of essential unity. And if that's true, if energy can neither be created nor destroyed, as science tells us, then every practitioner of magic is basically recycling energy all the time, since time immemorial. That's why our magic works, and that's one of the secrets to having the most successful outcomes, is by remembering that you're part of this greater oneness, that you're part of this essential unity. So if we're using the same energy that's existed since time immemorial, then the same energy we have in ecstasy is the same energy we have in agony. It's energy, period. So it can be directed according to our will. And essentially, if you look at our tradition in the ancient world, that was what gave our ancestors the edge, was they understood how to use their suffering, the oppression, all of those things that hurt, as well as all of those things that bring joy. So, pardon me, in order to make this work for you, it's important that everybody that's participating be willing to feel the real feelings that arise. And this could be uncomfortable, especially if you're not accustomed to allowing pain, in this case, to happen. So I've often told people in therapy and in counseling that suffering is pain is a normal part of our lives. Suffering is optional because suffering is what happens when we try to avoid pain, when we try to escape the feelings and escape that energetic shift. So society encourages us to be more skillful at victimhood, but at the same time suppress our innate ability to express resilience. That's what we're talking about when we talk about the malignant patriarchy, and even the malignant matriarchy that the patriarchy created, the false matriarchy, if you will. We become very comfortable as a result in expressing our victimhood and in feeling sorry for ourselves and doing all we can to avoid that feeling, but we don't necessarily get encouraged to express resiliency. And so last week we talked about that ecstatic state. And so everything I share from this slide on actually applies to both ecstasy and agony. So step 2 in this process is understand the power of sacred stories. So there's this inner alchemy that comes from uncovering truth through storytelling, and the hero's journey is one of the greatest and most often used tropes for those stories. And what I want us to do in this week's process is look at what the stories are that have the most meaning in your life. And so this is as much talking about transmuting pain in order to harness its magical energy as it is a connection to last week, because there's no difference. So take a look at the stories that have the most meaning in your life. For some people, it's stories. Well, for example, for people who are grew up very religious in the church, the story of the crucifixion is a story that is meaningful in their life because it's a story of sacrifice. It's a story of profound love. It's a story of triumphing over death. And we want those things in our own lives. But there are other stories and other traditions that bring us those same qualities, that bring us that same hope. And so look at what the stories are that have meaning for you, and maybe take notice if all of the stories that have the most meaning in your life are either about agony and suffering or about ecstasy and joy. Maybe ask yourself what it is about the opposite type of story that is uncomfortable for you, because in that discomfort there's power, and that's one of the ways that we begin this process of transmutation. So I want you to ask yourself over this next 2 weeks if you see a connection between the stories and struggles and challenges in those tales in that mythology and the struggles and challenges that you've overcome in your personal life. So this then becomes a bigger realization, so that we not only learn how to harness our own power, but if we're working with a client, we're working with somebody who's coming to us for working, we now have a better tool by finding out what the stories are that they've bought into, what the stories are that have meaning for them, so that we know where that keyhole is to unlock their own potential. And step 3 is to decide on something that you want to manifest in your life right now. So over the next 2 weeks, I want you to do that exercise of looking at the stories that matter to you, particularly the stories of a hero's journey where there's a suffering or a challenge that's overcome, and then decide on something you want to manifest right now in your life, and draw a symbol or a picture to represent that attainment. So in this module, there's another layer, and that layer is actually learning to understand and unlock what sigils really are. So there's this one school of thought that says, to do a sigil, you write out what it is that you want, you take out all the vowels, or sometimes you take out all the consonants, either way, all the doubled letters, and you rearrange them into some sort of picture. I'm going to tell you that for me as a neurodivergent person, that is just absolute craziness. I can't do that kind of a sigil. It doesn't it doesn't have the same feeling for me. But what I can do is picture what it is that I want, and then I just would close my eyes for a second and say, what does that look like in symbolic pictogram terms? And then I'll just draw whatever that symbol is. So you have to recognize, again, because everything is energy, that and we're going to talk about some of these things in a couple weeks. Even those things we talked about, I think 2 weeks ago, even those things that are fiction, like the Harry Potter stories, like Practical Magic and Lock and Key, even those things that are fiction are just as real as everything else that we're perceiving in this world. And so if there was a symbol in a fictional book that comes to mind, or that you're inspired by, use that symbol. Stop letting other people who write books mainly for the purpose of selling books, tell you how your sigils should be created. Some people are very artistic, so that symbol might be really beautiful. Other people are not. That symbol might be very basic, but it doesn't matter. I mean, if you look at the alchemical symbols for the elements, they're not pretty. There's nothing, nobody put a whole lot of time into that. They're just symbols, and they're charged with the energy of that element. So then I want you to take that symbol, place it on your kitchen table, on your altar, that if you have a separate altar, then you prefer to work that way. Place it there with a candle, a bowl of water, some salt, and some lit incense. And that will sit on the sigil will sit there on the table, along with all of those elemental representations. And now I want you to next close your eyes and think back to a time when something or someone really made you mad, and allow yourself to feel that anger arise. A time when you felt like there was an horrific injustice that was perpetrated against you, something unfair, something that just pissed you off, and allow yourself to notice how you felt in that moment, and let those feelings of anger that you felt then replay. Let that tape replay. Feel that anger. Feel where you're holding it in your body, because that's an opportunity for you also to let go when you're done with the exercise and heal it. So in other words, when you recall a time when you've been hurt, something that made you mad, that is a trauma. There is a trauma response attached to it. So if you allow yourself to feel that anger again, you can notice where you're holding that anger. And then the second part of your working can be to release that pain and then heal yourself. But for now, we just want to feel that anger and feel where we're holding it. And then notice the vibrational change as your body, almost at a subtle level, and for some people, this may be very visceral, shakes with the power of that anger. If you've ever been angry before, put your hand up if you've ever been so angry before that at least in your stomach, in your gut, if not your whole body, was shaking. Have you felt that before? Yeah. So notice that vibrational change, and then imagine that vibrational change forming a ball of energy, like one of those lightning globes right in front of you, about the level of your solar plexus, about 2 inches below your belly button. Feel that all of that anger come into this ball right in front of you. Now, the next step is the most important. And so I'm going to recommend that everybody listen to this as a replay, so that when we get to this next step, you can listen to these next 3 steps. And when I count back from 5 to 1, I want you to see yourself place your hands on either side of that ball of energy, not touching it, just on either side. And on 1, I want you to thrust that energy in the direction of that symbol that you drew sitting on your altar. Allow every bit of that energy to become neutralized the moment it hits the symbol, to just kind of dissolve and become raw, unbridled power, charging the symbol so that, like you, that symbol starts to vibrate. It may look like it becomes a little bit blurry to you. It may look like the whole table vibrates. And I want you to notice that the symbol then becomes the thing that's vibrating and no longer you. And so we do that at 5, 4, 3, 2, getting ready to thrust that energy to the sigil, 1. And now I want you to open your eyes and take that piece of paper and fold it into thirds, and then fold the thirds. So it's going to be, you would think I would have had a piece of paper ready for this, and I don't. Here we go. So you'll fold the piece of paper into thirds and then fold it in half. And then being careful so that you don't burn your place down, I want you to burn it in the fire of the candle or take it outside and bury it in the earth. And as you do that, I want you to notice too that that very action of having sent all that energy of that past anger into that sigil, not only charge the sigil, but now you will feel lighter. You'll have released an energetic burden. So this is a great practice that can be done either in agony or in ecstasy to allow you to find those places that need to heal. And then turn your awareness to the signs all around you over the next 9 days. And I know that that sounds kind of woo-woo and kind of new agey, but I swear to you, if you bring mindfulness to that moment, immediately after you burn or bury that piece of paper, shit will start to happen in some of the most like wild ways. Not all of the things that start to happen are going to be huge or metaphysical or impressive, but they will be things that you're aware, where your awareness turns to that moment. You may immediately see that the ancestors show up in that water, the bubbles. It looks like your glass of water turns into it looks like a glass of club soda. There's so many bubbles there. The energy is there because as you did these things, then so too did the ancestors have your back and work with you and on your behalf. And so you not only by doing this released your thing that needed to be healed, you not only charged that sigil to manifest the magic that you wanted to have happen, but in a really powerful way, you also helped the ancestors who were watching you do this and doing this with you, sympathetically doing this with you. You've helped them to heal some ancestral trauma. So now you know the secret. Within the context of this module, you may have noticed another of the secrets encoded into your DNA got unlocked. You might have felt something that in your listening that just felt like a tingle going down your spine, or maybe butterflies in your stomach. Now you know how our ancestors overcame the trials and tribulations, the intolerance, and in some cases, even brutal enslavement and abuse that they went to, especially those who came from the old country to this country in the turn of the 20th century, who experienced unspeakable trauma, including lynching. The largest lynching in the United States was a group of Sicilians in New Orleans. And now you know how they did this, but you also know how other cultures did this. This is the secret to the African diasporic traditions. This is the secret to some of the Celtic home magic that's done. History is filled with so many subtly encoded stories of people who did the same thing. So this was Christmas season, so many of us saw The Sound of Music, or in a much darker story, Schindler's List. Both related to one another, but this is how they overcame that brutal enslavement and intolerance and risk to their lives. It's also what we find in the stories of the Loa and the Orishas, in the stories of Maximilian Kolbe and Edith Stein, and so on. This is that transmutative power that in religious circles, in religious language, they encode as saintly, sainthood or saintliness, or acts of of grace and heroism and martyrdom, but it's the energy that's used to transmute that horrible stuff that's going on in your life and turn it into energy that you can use to bring about transformation. So connect with those stories. And I like to point out, religion generally manipulates and controls us, but spirituality, which is what we're talking about when we talk about esotericism, provides us with a cosmological framework within each of us can personally and then as a group explore our true nature, our true power, and our true sovereignty. And the reason that this is such an important thing, I think, for us as a community to get our arms around now is that we're now at a place where there is a broad enough span of people in the community to where there are some who are just getting started on their journey, others who have been at it for a while, some, who are more advanced and who get into the grittier, more raw magic, while others are still healing their traumas that might make them uncomfortable with those sort of things. But we can all use all of that experience, including the differences that exist between us, as energy that can be used toward our working, toward our ancestral healing. And our ancestors understood this. They skillfully crafted ways to hide within plain sight. That's why the tradition of taking the lemon with you in your pocket to midnight mass on Christmas Eve and scratching the lemon. If you want to see who the person is who's vexing you, you dig your nail into that lemon and it will be the last person who leaves, and they won't be able to leave until you leave. And these are the traditions, the magic, that there's no magic in the lemon. There's no magic in the scratching it with your finger. It's just that somebody's ancestor at some time said, I'm going to find out who it is who's fucking with me. And the way they chose to do that was to work with their spiritual ally, who was the lemon. And we hide things in plain sight by using what's around us. That's why we have scissors, not athames. That's why we have a kitchen table, not a pretty little altar. And because we could do these things and hide them in plain sight. And at the same time that we're doing that for ourselves to create the outcomes that we want, our ancestors did these things while serving the communities in which they lived. And so somebody would say, I'm going to go see, Zia Angelina, because I have a headache and I think so-and-so put the Molokyo on me. And Zia Angelina would do the Molokyo removal for them. But while she was doing that removal, the practitioner knows that they're also healing generational traumas for the person who came to them and for them, because we recognize the fact that we're all one family, and that the magic I do for you is magic I do for me and for those who came before us. And so this is the path of the hero. It's the path of the healer, the sorcerer, the mystic, the lover, and the alchemist. And hopefully you'll all take time to watch the previous module and this one again back to back after you do this exercise, and then see if there aren't some aha moments, see if there aren't some tingles that go down your spine as that DNA activates, those memories that are encoded in your DNA, turn on, just like so many of you had happen when a year ago, actually this weekend, we did the Molokyo removal, this Christmas Eve session. And all of a sudden people had this amazing experience. So it had nothing to do with the Molokyo, it just had to do with those ancient memories that are encoded to your DNA. And I am absolutely convinced that this material that we shared tonight is another one of those things that in a very big way will unlock DNA and DNA memories and a piece of your magic for each of you. It takes us out of the sort of the me-centric place. So even though we want to affect an outcome for ourselves, this is bigger than ourselves. This practice is bigger. It's healing. If I heal the place where I hold my pain, I heal everybody around me who's been affected by where I'm holding my pain. And when we do that, we're doing powerful work that not only the living people around us need, but those who've crossed over and left this plane need, and ancestors that we have no clue about, that where there are connections. This past week, I'll just leave it with this. um, I was talking to one of the members of our community, and it's amazing to me when people tell me their stories, how as their story unfolds, I find all the places where their ancestors connected with other people in our community. And so all I can do out of professionalism, I can't tell the other people that they have the connection to, but I can tell them, hey, you need to talk to so and so and so and so, because they're looking for people that were connected to that same family, that same last name, that same town. And it's amazing to me because it manifests in a way that I think probably wouldn't have been possible for our ancestors to heal that generational trauma, because they didn't have technology. They didn't have a way for somebody from Canada and somebody from Vermont and somebody from California to be able to be in one place at one time and say, oh my gosh, we have some common ancestry. They may be second or third or fifth or 12th cousins, it doesn't matter. But if you get that opportunity to work on healing you, and then that bubble expands to heal the next generation and the next generation, at some point you get these like Venn diagrams of healing that are taking place in ways that we just couldn't even begin to imagine. And so for me, at a time when I do a lot of introspection at the end of the year, and when I'm dealing with doing what I can to heal the generation before me as they get ready to leave this planet. um, it was just such a warm and beautiful space to be in, to see that that when we allow ourselves to kind of step outside of that selfish desire to just focus on us and on our immediate family and what's going on with me right here right now, when we kind of step into that space of really um, digging into that essential unity, the healing we get is friggin' phenomenal. Like it's bigger than anything we could have accomplished if we just stayed stuck on the small picture. And so I just want to say, in conclusion, since this is our last class of the year, thank you so much to every single one of you for having made my life richer, my healing greater, and the healing of our planet so much bigger than I could have ever accomplished for myself, because of the work that you put in to healing you. So I truly mean from the bottom of my heart, thank you. It's been an amazing year. I mean, these last 2 years have sucked dead monkey balls, like I said on my Facebook post. But through all of that, we were able to use that crap to transmute the pain and the suffering and the illness and everything else, and hopefully uncover and unlock for each of us another piece of that DNA that needed healed. So, anything that like we'll keep the discussion of that to 2 weeks from now when you've done the exercise. But anything that came up for anybody relative to those things, any aha moments that came up for you, Dominic?
Yeah, actually, something that actually transpired Christmas Eve, which connected to what you were talking about of trauma, and then something that actually occurred in one of Michael's rosary circles, and how these things interconnect. So, a couple years back, there was a like a what we call like a misa in Latin American spirituality, like a séance, basically. But so there was a young lady. She wanted to know who her guides were. So what happens is like a circle of people in the religion in Santeria will sit around the person, and just whatever we call evidencia comes to you, you say, okay, I see your guide, this. So there was something that she was like holding on to, and it was visible. So one of the priestesses, one of the santeros, who's very Brooklyn, she's like, honey, she's like, look around the room. She's like, everyone here is initiated, and maybe you see everyone as an elder, but none of us have our shit together. So whatever you have to say it. You're in this is good company, and it's in confidence. So she said what she had to say. And the priestess told her, when you are ready, go to um a church or any religious site that you feel comfortable with. And she's like, it could be during a mass, it could be where there's nobody around, and just cry and let out all the emotions. And she's like, that is the cheapest and most effective cleansing of all time, basically. She's like, you don't have to do all this crazy stuff. You can. She's like, what you're dealing with is emotional. So I tend to cry at Christmas Eve for some reason because, and Annette will get this connection of like the whole thing with Narnia, will always winter and never cry, like that feeling of hopelessness right before the year ends, and you think about all the stuff that's gone on, good and bad. And as soon as they play the opening hymn, it's like psh, waterworks for me. Like I can't stop it. And I just like, yeah. But then after that, there's like that cleansing kind of feeling, like, okay, I feel better. I got it off my chest basically. So it was like, I think 2 weeks ago, when Michael's rosary circles are basically seances. I call them that because he calls on the ancestors, the spirits, everything known since the beginning of time, and you feel all those things. And so there was a young lady there, and I don't know what she was going through, but when she was saying her intentions before the Hail Mary, she was like letting out all this stuff, and I was like, yo, could you have like warned us first before you dumped all that on? Because it's even though it's not an official religious service, it's still functioning as a spiritual circle. So that, and when you're calling on the ancestors and all that, those doorways are open. So me, and us, that work with, people in a spiritual capacity, we tend to like do something to kind of prepare ourselves, before you do a reading, before you have a coaching session, so that you can take it and help the person but not absorb that energy in. So while she was saying that, I just felt so sick for some reason, and not because she was like a bad person. I think I was like, "Whoa, and I just grabbed, like, my Florida water was nearby. I grabbed it, and I'm like, I took a Zoom meeting. I'm like, I don't care. I just started putting it on myself in front of and maybe like, one or two people caught the reference of what I was doing, and then like after, like I was on Facebook Messenger with Michael like during the rosary prayers while the ladies are saying it. I'm like, talk to your girl, tell her to get a spiritual bath or something after the meeting or something, because it's like it was so much, Jemima. It was like all of that trauma and suffering was just like being dumped on. And I was like, I felt bad for her, but I was like, whoa, that's a lot. Whatever you're going through, honey, that's a lot. And it just goes to show you that power of that, the traumatic experience. And you can't, because the next meeting like we went to with her, she was fine. She was like all like, "Oh." But we were like the cleansing mechanism, I guess. But I was like, you could have like warned us first.
You know, I wasn't going to talk about it in this module, but since you brought that up, and that's such a powerful example that I wouldn't have had access to, um, for those who do work with others, I one of the things that I used to see my aunt do this. My grandmother not so much, but my aunt. I think the more sensitive a person is to those energies, the response can be that visceral. And so my aunt used to tell me, before you work with anybody or do any working, take something, an object. It could be a piece of wood, it could be something that's going to deteriorate in the earth, and place that in within sight, because normally we would do these things, person to person, not by correspondence of any kind, and we didn't have the internet. Place it within sight, and when those feelings start to come, and they're really purging that heaviness and that darkness, you do the same thing we did in this module, and throw it to the piece of the branch or the leaves that are underneath the candle, or like she would always make it so that it wasn't obvious to the person that was there. She would do it very often with grape leaves. and she'd spread the grape leaves underneath the candle and then throw it to that. And as soon as the person was like, that person was just barely even done, just remember seeing Tia Maria taking, blowing out the candle. And before she even washed her hands, she would take those leaves and she'd fold them up in a little packet and she'd put it in her apron, and then finish everything she was doing. And as the person was leaving, she'd walk out the door with them. And when they were out of sight, she would take that thing and just shove it in the ground. So that's just for those who are practitioners, that's a good example. Or like what Dominic did is absolutely, when you're feeling that, you don't need to care what anybody else is going to think. You got that Florida water, you got that Strega oil, you've got whatever it is that allows you to get that cleansing energy going, do it. You don't want to take that shit on. So thank you for that, because that was a really great way to exemplify how we take this module and then make it serve the bigger picture, make it serve the greater community. Anybody else have anything that they want to share? Yeah, Francesca.
Oh, Ellen, you're unmuted and I saw you go first.
That's okay, go ahead.
I was just the aha moment that I had as you were sharing was in the non-dualistic nature, and I've been playing with this idea of trash magic, where like life throws you this pile of trash and most people would just see this heap of shit, and instead of seeing it as a piece of shit, see it as this fuel that I can burn. And I've been playing with that idea of around my condo. And this has been an interesting scenario to do workings around, because it happens in waves. It's not like this one thing happens and I can do work around it, transmute the pain, and then move on. It's like I do that, and then 3 weeks later, another pile of shit gets dumped on. So it's been this constant reworking, and there's like a level of exhaustion that I'm getting to of I feel like almost it's not hopelessness, but it's almost apathy. It's like I don't even want to do work around it anymore. It's like I've done so much work around it for the past 2.5 years. And so I've had to reframe it a little bit. And this module has given me, I think, another like invitation to do more work around it, and playing with this idea of trash magic to harness sacred rage. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, and it might be helpful for you to use that experience of exhaustion rather than anger as the fuel that you do this exercise with, because it may lift that exhaustion. Because exhaustion is another form of anger. It's a form of feeling the oppression of the people that are doing us wrong, of the situations that are taking that are interfering with our power. So use that, because the sensation in your body is the same, and I absolutely applaud using the trash as fuel, because that's definitely how we get to that next place. There's a reason the trash shows up in our life, and that reason is so that we have fuel for that. Like for us, particularly for those who are for whom fire is our primary elemental, we need that shit to burn in order to keep the fire alive. And so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Ellen.
Do we ever need that shit to burn? As you were talking about the course, it took me back to the Stray Gunneria 101 course, how we did that exercise and brought in the energy and threw it out. And I've been working with that actually all along, but taking it up to the next level is really exciting. So putting it into doing more deeper work on my part and healing that trauma, that when that anger comes up, is really gonna, it just might, yeah, like,
Right on.
this is Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Good.
there's nothing wrong with just doing what we did in the 101 course to just heal the trauma itself and the trauma
Mhm.
response, to let go of the trauma response. But if you can use that that anger and that trauma and that those memories to affect a positive outcome in something else that you're doing, it does two things. One is it disempowers the trauma response. It makes it so much less important because you've got better stuff to do. So you're healing just by saying, I'm going to use this as fuel, as grist for the
Mhm.
mill, or however you like to see it. Um, and at the same time, it heals the old stuff and brings about, and it becomes fuel to make the new stuff happen.
Mhm.
So
And,
thank you
and
for
I found too that the anger still comes back, but it's not as strong in the next time. And that, you don't want to, it's not that you don't want to break down and get into those feelings. It's just, it's part of holding it back too, I guess. So
yeah, like Francesca said, it's exhausting. I
yeah,
mean,
it
when
is.
you
It really
realize that
is.
you're holding that stuff back and where you're holding it, chances are pretty good you find that place where you have the most pain in your body. Where your body is not as fluid and as able to kind of relax and soften. And I always tell somebody, look at the last place that hurts before you fall asleep, and then notice when you do this kind of work, notice that that's the place where that anger starts. The moment you think of that horrible thing, and there are, if you go back to the 101 course, there are those things that happen in our lives that are where we hold the pain or the anxiety or the fear that manifests in the body, that becomes disease, that becomes suffering.
Mhm.
Annette and Melissa, anything you wanted to share?
I just wanted to say how I had to write it down what you said about the exhaustion as another form of anger, because never in a million years would I have recognized that. And I think for myself, like, I feel like exhaustion has probably been like, I've been feeling it really deeply this fall, like in a very profound way. And part of that is just being ill, but it does feel like there's this emotional layer. And as soon as you said that, I was like, all of a sudden I could feel the anger behind the exhaustion. I don't think I would have ever seen that before. So I just kind of am a little bit distracted by how profound that is for me to recognize that, and how that changes things. Like, I feel like I have to really like sit with that or understand that more. And so when I'm going to do this work, I think I'm going to work with exhaustion. Like, I don't feel like I have a lot of anger or right now, and I have a lot of trauma in my life, but I don't feel like I have a lot of access to that, to those feelings of trauma or anger or whatever else, but I have a profound amount of exhaustion. And so yeah, so I think that's really helpful for me to think about actually using that and seeing the kind of power energy that's kind of behind that.
When you do that work, um, specifically for you, just sort of an ancestral tip from your ancestors, before you start the work, drink a big glass of water, spring water, like not tap water, some kind of purified water. Um, Drink the water, because particularly when somebody tells me they don't feel like they have a lot of anger but they have exhaustion, you want to be able to have those waters moving and have the mother move that stuff out of you, because otherwise it could be really traumatic to feel like, genuinely that you don't have any anger but you do have exhaustion, and then all of a sudden the aha moment happens and you're like, oh, some of that exhaustion is anger. That exhaustion comes from being angry for so long. And so get that water in your system, and maybe drink a glass of water afterwards as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the yeah, all of that what you just said, like Melissa, and I feel like and you may relate to this as well. I feel like for those of us who are sort of hyperactive in nature and kind of we're always just like buzzing from one place to another and we kind of keep ourselves active, there is that tendency to, and I don't feel like it's categorically evasive or, you know, that we're trying to like not deal with things, but I feel like that's like an occupational hazard of being hyper, is that like it's easy for us to get distracted and kind of stuff a little on a certain level, you know? And so for me, like I was having that same thought of like, there's a lot been going on in my life, just on a personal note, where like all these things, and it's like, I haven't been consciously feeling anger very much, but I have a short fuse. So what's going on there? You know, so there's like all these things. Yeah, so I'm really going to be simmering with that, what everything you guys were just saying, because that's really relevant to me. But I see, yeah, the potential in that, and just I'm excited about this because really, for me, it's that I've said this a million times over the year of recording, I'm sure, but just like that need to sit and take that time. And when I do it, it's so profound, and it benefits me, and I can sense it. But I really have to, it's such a conscious effort for me to meditate or like sit still for 5 minutes and just, you know, it's still even just like to sit and say, I'm going to sit now and have a cup of coffee with my ancestor. Like it is such an effort for me to do that mentally, to sit still. And so yeah, just on every level, I feel like I'm excited about, you know, what may unfold here. I'd love to add, I mean, this is kind of mundane at this point, I guess, but it was really notable for me. I had a very, I guess the fact that it was mundane is what's notable. On Christmas Eve evening, I was, you know, zipping around doing the things, the kitchen, going around, and I have my ancestral altar right in it's like right next to the doorway between my dining room and kitchen, which is where I want it, because I like that it's right there between, like, any holiday, that's where I'm at. I live in that doorway. So, and I had been having this conversation with my nonno the whole night. Like I kept going back and forth, and I was like, okay, I know. Like I kept coming back and forth, just like, I know I have to leave the amaretto. I know I have to come back. Okay, yes, I know I didn't do the presepio. I have to go leave a candle. Like, and I was coming back and forth, and I would come and I'd put a thing down and I would like keep cooking or whatever I'm doing. And I stopped and I looked down, and the glass of water, like you said, was like club soda. It was just right. And I hadn't really had that moment. Like it happened a little bit, but that wasn't something that had really been present. And it was just like, I got all like, I had that moment of just like time freezes, and I got all like goosebumps and like, okay, you know, I just had that moment. That was really like my beautiful Christmas Eve no moment.
And there's your key to how to slow down, is do those things that allow time to freeze, and that slows you down. It takes you outside of, I mean, your body may still be running around like, you know, a chicken with its head cut off, but your energy can become grounded, because for some people, sitting and meditating is just not part of who they are. So like, it's hard at this time of year to do a walking meditation outside, but maybe the walking meditation's in a museum, or maybe the walking meditation is in some other indoor, you know, indoor place where you can just kind of be there as the observer. And Dominic just said that his friend, I just lost where's my chat screen? There we go. His friend who is a chef, that says cooking is meditation for him. And for me, that's very, very true. You know, for people who are used to just being busy, we can find that place where it slows our breathing down, and we can still be moving, so that we're not sitting there. Because if I try to sit on a meditation mat, I'm thinking about all the things I need to do when I'm done meditating. And I'm thinking about how my back hurts, and I'm thinking about how this is really an annoying position, and how nice it would be if I didn't have spinal stenosis and could sit like all the other good little monks. But if I'm in the kitchen, the same spinal stenosis is there. It's just as painful on the body, but I'm not thinking about it, because I'm bringing the joy to the food, the love to what I'm doing. Or if I'm, you know, taking a walking meditation, you know, it's you're being present to the art, or to the music, or the theater, or whatever it is. So thank you for that. And thank you all. Keep me in your thoughts, because I think as we've been sitting here, I think the temperature might be moving in the wrong direction. So I'm going to give the doctor a holler and see what's going on over at the hospital, and see if she just wants me to wait and start taking some meds, or but I will see all of you in 2 weeks. And at that time, I will be in Atlanta. I'll be in Atlanta for at least the month of January, if not January into mid-February. But our schedule will remain the same. The only thing I won't do is Zia Angelina is not going to start her class until I'm back home, because I could just picture what Michigas that bring what Michigas that would bring to my dad in his last hours to see Zia Angelina, who he thinks is hysterical, but I don't think he needs to see her in person or see me putting the breastplate on and stuffing all that into a dress. So thanks for your love and kind thoughts, and I really look forward to hearing from all of you and everybody who's watching on the replay on what this exercise unlocks for you over the next 2 weeks. Be well. Love and appreciate you. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Kwanzaa, all that stuff.